I just felt to accept that you're not good for anyone.
Hi, it's Justin Coletti of Sonic Scoop, and welcome to MixCon 2024, where we are bringing you back-to-back masterclasses with some of the best producers and engineers working today. Today's mixing masterclass is with a guy named Jason Cheese Goldberg. And Cheese, as he's known by his friends, is a producer, engineer, mixer who's worked with an array of huge hip-hop artists. He's racked up billions of streams with artists like NBA YoungBoy, aka YoungBoy NeverBrokeAgain, and others like Travis Scott, Tyler the Creator, No Cap, and a whole bunch more. He's worked with major pop artists like Nick Jonas and Meghan Trainor. And today, he's going to be taking us under the hood of a mix for YoungBoy, showing you exactly what he does in every step of the process, from recording these tracks all the way to final mixdown and even insights into the mastering process. What makes Jason Cheese Goldberg's masterclass so unique is that he's often working with artists in a kind of guerrilla fashion on a completely portable rig, recording and mixing major hits that have been streamed hundreds of millions of times and more in ordinary, even compromised environments like apartments and hotel rooms. This one is super inspiring because Cheese is able to get the kinds of sounds that are heard hundreds of millions of times using the same kind of gear and the same kinds of environments that we all have access to. Like all MixCon masterclasses, this one is free to the public thanks to our sponsors, and the sponsor on this one is a natural fit. It is oeksound, makers of great plugins like Soothe, Bloom, and Spiff. This one is a supernatural fit because Cheese told me himself that he uses oeksound Soothe 2 on every single mix he does. And this is probably an essential tool to have when you're recording practically all of your vocals in a fairly guerrilla fashion in any kind of room. Soothe 2 can remove harshness from vocals, excess muddiness, and even boominess and roominess from vocals, giving you a much more polished result on practically any source, almost no matter where it was recorded. He's also been checking out their new Bloom plugin lately, which he's told me some really good things about. And we'll talk about all of that stuff more in a live Q&A that we will do with Cheese after this main masterclass concludes. If you're catching the live premiere of this video, feel free to type your questions into the chat box on the side of your screen, and we will save the best questions that come in for the end when we do that live Q&A with Jason coming right up after this. We've also had a couple of live streams with the guys from oeksound, including one that just ran earlier this week, so be sure to check those out. Make sure you hit like and subscribe and that notifications bell so you don't miss notices about any more of the great MixCon masterclasses that are coming your way over the next few weeks. Or go to sonicscoop.com, sign up for the newsletter there, and we can send you emails when they come out. Also go to sonicscoop.com because we are giving away tens of thousands of dollars worth of free gear in the MixCon mega giveaway with 3 chances to win. We're giving away speakers, headphones, plugins, all sorts of stuff. Check it out, MixCon mega giveaway. The link is going to be down there in the description and the comments and the show notes. So check it out and good luck to you. All right, without any further ado, a MixCon masterclass from the one and only Jason Cheese Goldberg. Cheese. Take it away.
Hi, my name's Jason. My friends call me Cheese. Excited to be here for MixCon. I want to thank oeksound, Sonic Scoop. I'm here to give a little insight into my workflow, how I deal with the process of recording and mixing and mastering and producing and making music and creating. I wanted to give the newcomer or the person that's been doing this for a while or just the ones that can't live without it a bit of how I deal with the process. For me, it starts at ground zero, right at the very beginning, understanding the artists that you're working with, knowing where they're at and their personality, and how to maneuver within those environments to create the best possible music. Because at the end of the day, it's always just been about the music for me. My process really does start at the very beginning there. Today, we're going to be talking about 2 songs that I did with NBA YoungBoy at the end of 2021. We're going to dive into a session for Heart and Soul. And at the end of that, I'm going to browse through Blackball. And we're going to see how I use the tools to help facilitate just a really fast process. I think both the songs were done in under 45 minutes, 45 to an hour, maybe tops. When I got the call to head to Utah that first time out around October or November of 2021, I wanted to make sure that right off the bat, we had that moment that was, we're back. And I've worked with Top for a while now. He knows me really well. I know him really well. I had a session a few weeks before that with Julie Lewis and Fizzle. I heard a guitar riff that was like, that's the one. And we built out what is now Heart and Soul. And I think we always had that in mind, right? It was always there. And I remember I got to the house. It was a bedroom downstairs, and there was no studio. It was a dresser, a space, and there was a bed in there. And I took apart the bed and pulled the mattress and put it up and set the chair up and threw some blankets over it and put the rig on a 6-drawer dresser and set my Pelican case in front of it. And I think from there, we went for the next 6 months within that setup. That is a big part of how I work. I work anywhere, any place, anytime. And that's all part of the creative process, starting at that original recording to where the mixes come from and the master that came out. For Blackball, I believe I was at a hotel room down the street from where Top's place was that I spent a little bit more time on for Heart and Soul, and I did all of that out of the hotel room down the street. I mixed probably 5 or 6 albums out of that hotel room. When we get in and talk about what my process is for mixing, it all starts at recording and making sure that those recordings are clean, are fluid, are easy to manipulate, are good right off the bat, we're committed, because a lot of the times those version ones or the feeling that we captured at the end of that bounce is what a lot of the world hears. I got to go in a little heavier on Heart and Soul. You'll see a direct copy from Blackball from the session and then out into the world. That's really what I want to drive home on. I spent a lot of time in the studio and I learned the right ways to do things. For me, the biggest part was pushing and breaking down those boundaries to something that still feels good to me. And I'm glad it feels good to a lot of other people. I keep my speakers really close. It's still an equilateral triangle, but why this setup works for me, I mix low. I have a really tight near field space, and I can do it on a coffee table in a living room or a hotel suite in the corner or a desk in a room or a nightstand in a corner. And I don't allow the limitations necessarily to get in the way because I'm part of the process start to finish. And that's also a big part of my workflow is there from start, middle, and end because I have the reference points for where it goes. Let's talk about equipment too. Speakers, near fields. I love the sound of the Neumanns, but more so why I made the decision was because of the protection on the grill. I can throw them in a suitcase or I have a carrying case and I can ensure they don't get damaged. I rock with a Mac Mini that goes to an Apollo X4. I use Sony MDRs. A lot of what you're going to see in how I work is the consistency of my tools. The consistency of the tools are so important because that's my baseline. If the vocal's a little light, if the vocal's a little compressed, if vocal's not compressed enough, we'll talk about what all that means. But, if there's a little bit of distortion, you can go from point to point to figure it out quickly. It's a bad cable, microphone's cutting out. It all starts with knowing what you have. And that's why any environment I go into, whether we're pulling up to a B&B or we're on the road and we're in a tour bus or we even go into a studio, I rarely use the studio's equipment. It slows things down, and unless it's something that I'm really comfortable with on how I have the time and can maneuver and am sure that it's going to better the workflow. But in most cases, the consistency for me and my clients trumps all of that. It's the most important, making sure that what we heard 2 weeks ago or yesterday gets heard again. In console, we have a 88RS preamp, and that goes to CL1B, MK2. Those are getting printed into my record track. We have the gain set to 26. I add a little compression throughout the 88RS. I take down the fader to -5 to lower input into the tube tech. I have the threshold at -10, a ratio at 4:1. Most cases, I'll add a little extra gain, medium attack, relatively quick release, and all of that goes directly into my record track in Pro Tools. This is the record track I've used from the very beginning, sitting outside of rooms for, 17 hours and just playing with sound, getting a vocal, a raw vocal, dropping it into the template and listening to how the frequencies are responding to that signal. That's how I did it. We use Auto-Tune Artist to a de-esser, a little bit more compression, some multi-band, another EQ, and another de-esser. I push that pretty loud straight out the direct output, and those get dropped down to these lead tracks underneath. We have the 2-track set up here. I like to color coordinate everything. I like to use colors to differentiate parts. Intro, outro is yellow, hooks are red, verses are blue. We get to another hook. Maybe there's a B section, or the second half of this is the verse, and the beginning of the second part I like to call like a B section. So technically this would be blue into the last hook and the outro, yellow. And so that flow helps me and the client while we're working to see where musical parts repeat, which again, we all start from the very beginning, and that's all part of my workflow, is ensuring that from the recording to the process of creating, and then while we're both on the headphones and flying in the moment writing, all of the other pieces are falling into place, right? I love the way the session looks. It inspires me. It looks like I'm sequencing a whole other track just with vocals. It's a lot of fun. You can get really fast at it. Everything from here to here are all throws, effects. And I like to have those underneath the raw lead tracks and then the stabs and ad-libs underneath for textures, right? We'll dive into all of that. But you can see, for instance, like if I grabbed this lead, well, it matches directly with that, which is a delay. And then right here, it was doubled again, which is a reverb, really light reverb. And that has the little fade at the beginning. You can manipulate how the audio is being processed, opposed to sending a send and writing the automation and spending the extra 30 seconds to create that moment. It can literally just be play, drop as you're recording into the next thing. And you're getting some serious mixing done while you're doing this. You're EQing and you're making sure that everything's hitting your buses correctly. And like I said, it's a live performance on both sides. So let's listen to a little bit of the track we're going to work on today.
When the judge came home, time passed, went back again. All the pain I felt inside myself, thought it would never end. I just thought I'd blame myself, can't even blame my friends. I was criticizing myself like you ain't never gonna win. Kentrell, you gotta man up, you done had all these keys. I'm like Kentrell, you gotta stand up, it's your time, I see. I'm like Deshaun, Dagan, you just hustling backwards, nigga, you didn't want. I just felt to accept that you not good for anyone. Oh, oh, and oh, oh, and oh, I can feel it in my soul.
I can feel it in my soul. And I loved when that lyric hit. It was such a moment for me because, you know, a huge part of the song was adding that heartbeat throughout all of it. And that heart and soul just felt so good to me, you know, and this is going throughout the record. So I was explaining the 2-track and how, you know, we recorded to the 2-track. I got to import stems and spend a little bit more time on this one where, you know, even the track was manipulated more. That was all placed there, sample accurate. And we have our sends, which we have sent from our buses. I like to do the buses in yellow. And in this, I'm breaking a lot of rules, but it sounded good to me. So where to begin? You have the stems going to this music bus. You know, whenever I drop stems in, I just create names for whatever I feel at the moment. We have kick, low bass, distorted bass, synth riff, hi-hat 1, hi-hat 2, open hi-hat, snare left, snare. An interesting thing I did with this one was the snare I split into mono and then panned left, right, and then delayed the right side. Looks by like 6 milliseconds for a little Haas effect, but I cut off all the high end to just add a little low texture around that snare. And those are going to the mix bus, I mean the music bus, excuse me, which is then getting sent to the pre-master or your master bus essentially. But I wanted to add even a little bit more texture on the master. So I have a pre, which is like my mix, and then the final stages of a master that I felt were necessary. I think that's one of the things about this session in particular is I went for a texture that was really wide and cool in that way. And I'll show you how I achieved all of those. You can hear right? Let's talk about what's happening on the kick. We have little R bass, standard clip. It's one of my favorite clippers, oversampling at 16. Looks like I'm sending to a bus 53, which is, I believe, a key input for a compressor set, on the bass. So every time the kick hits that key input, the signal is ducking a little bit to make space for both. That happens on the low bass and the distorted bass in this section. And that's really, in most cases, that's just an overuse of EQ, but I think I was pushing distortion across this whole record. One of my favorite ways to create distortion is EQ by shelving lows and highs and boosting mids. It's such an interesting take on distortion that sounds really good to me, opposed to throwing a plugin on there, although there is some of that happening in this session as well. We got a synth riff. And it looks like I've processed that pretty heavily with a delay, quarter note, ping pong, left, right, the hi-hat, which is pretty much just what I got, and the hi-hat 2, a little bit more top end. Open hi-hats, snare left, just a little bit of volume. Your snare, a little bit of the mid cut out, and then here's what I was talking about earlier. So you listen to the snare. I split into mono right here, and that created the left and right of the stereo. And then from there, we have the left right when blended just adds a little bit more body and felt good stereo. The melody.
Kentrell, you got a man up.
So the melody, again, boosting a lot of top end. Sorry, I don't want to talk over the music, but boosting a lot of top end, which is really adding a lot of noise. But it just felt so cool texturally. And then the heartbeat that's in there. The vocals, we have our leads. Okay, let's start with hook.
Kentrell, you got a man up, you done had all these keys. I'm like, Kentrell, you gotta stand up, it's your time, I see. I'm like, Deshaun, Dagan, you just hustling backwards, nigga, you didn't want. I just felt to accept that you not good for anyone. Oh.
So I'm double busting the output of this. It's wrong. You run into phase issues, a bunch of other stuff that doesn't actually make sense. I dig it. I chose to do it. It's essentially a parallel bus. You can do that by holding down Control and selecting multiple outputs. And that's how I have 2 outputs selected for this bus. So you can see
Kentrell, you got a man up, you done had
vocal and CLA. And the vocal is being processed. That's going to the pre-master, and the CLA is being processed and going to the pre-master, and they're summing there. You know, I have the CLA much lower to just add just the slightest bit of texture. But let's dive in straight off the input of the lead vocal, okay? We start at tune, got an alto tenor set up into a lot of stages of compression. I like to slowly and in small amounts process everything. We process a compressor, and then we have another style of compression, and then an EQ to a de-esser, to another de-esser, but they're hitting different frequencies. We have 5506 with a narrow band, and then we have the higher frequencies at 10.5 getting dipped as well. Another EQ with some notches, some frequencies I dislike, and another compressor at the end. That goes out into the vocal bus, which gets straight into another de-esser to trim some of that. It's like a multi-band, essentially, to boost some lows and tame some mids, a limiter for overall volume, but also texture into an SSL channel strip. I like to cut off a lot of the high end on that to a de-esser on even higher, 11,000, that's tailoring some of that. Another multi-band, I have some of the lows cut off, a little bit boost on the top end. All that's getting hit and leveling along the way. A CLA after that for just a bit of spread in the stereo. At this point, we're like really tight. You know what I mean? We've got a lot of stuff going on, and I can play with it however I want. If I wanted to just skyrocket the top end, cut the lows, take the mids. I mean, I have so much control with the EQ at this point that I can manipulate a sound for just about anything. And then we get to our oeksound here with Soothe 2, which I have a setting to help with some harshness. Depending on where I hear that harshness, I can, take, and if I hear it above 3.5 or, in this case, between 1 to 2K, it's a really powerful plugin I like to use. And all of that goes to the busing. We have NY, which is parallel compression. I'm just doubling the signal, again, to a very hard, limited source to add just the right amount of texture that kind of gives me a little bit on top, a plate reverb, that is a medium plate and some top end boost, an echo, which I like to think of as a chamber or something like that from back in the day. It's just a Valhalla. The hall, you can see a pre-delay setting on it. The high and low cut's been changed a little bit. A throw track, which is just a longer delay. I delay it at the beginning with an eighth note that goes into the concert hall Valhalla, and then we're throwing this. Remember, I was telling you about distortion with EQ. This is a great technique to achieve that texture where you're cutting your lows and your highs and your peaking resonance in the mids that add just this great little texture around what you need. And I have a dip here that was probably offending me at the time. We have an exciter, which is top end, OD overdrive, which is decapitator, some drive settings, a high cut, some low cut. We have a quarter note delay, which is my trusty H delay with some filters set in, and a lowered feedback. We have a doubler for width, no direct signal, and a mod here, which is like a chorus, essentially, that is also adding to the texture of that. From there, with those sends that are being sent off the lead bus, we're coming into this vocal bus, which I guess wasn't getting what I needed exactly, and it looks like the top end was the trickiest part. So I decided to process that a little bit more, and then we have our multed output to the CLA, where I have some pretty heavily processed double going EQ'd, and the Sans amp, which is a distortion that's pretty heavy on the mid-range, that is volume being automated from start to finish from the CLA multed track. And that was to help an impact at the end of the song that felt how I felt throughout all of it. And we kind of crescendo out with
I can feel it in my soul.
out from this double that comes up off that automation, and again that multiband that's trimming some of those mids. So that's the lead vocal. You can see when we're writing, it's just straight through. We have all the effects that I was telling you about. So there are those moments where I want to pull and keep movement going, or I want a little bit of reverb between that line to that line, or I want a delay to pop out there or there, to help me feel like there's never a dull moment in what's happening. A lot of that comes from this section of my workflow. When you listen to it solo, it sounds like it's out of place. I love when you can hear something that solo sounds like it pops out, but then when I have it going to all the processing, and I also send those, I have a few going to their own buses that are unprocessed by other vocals, but I like to group them into a compressor so that they glue even further together, and it creates this one sound so that nothing pops out that doesn't feel like it's together, right? So if you listen to that again in the same section,
I can feel it in my soul. They say that he ain't gonna be here long. I see.
You don't even hear that delay pop out after that on the other vocal coming through, because half of those are being sent to the same vocal bus and getting processed in that way. Again, for the most part, I'm doing a lot of stuff that's incorrect on how specific things are supposed to be done, but texturally, I like the way it feels. And under that, we have stabs and ad-libs that are being processed differently. I have like this first part that has a one knob on it, and I love deverb, especially in the church setting. you can get such cool sounds if you just play with the high cut a little bit differently. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, on a track like that, I'm adding that natural distortion by EQ, and it completely shifts things. I mean, if you want to have some fun, just play around with an EQ boosted in the mid range, and then drop that into the deverb, and keep the percentage pretty light, but play around up to 13K and listen to how it floats. It's so cool. One of the cool parts of this one that can show you how much power you have with stems is, so if you listen to the 2-track of the start of the second verse, right? Okay, and at the moment that felt good to us when we were creating without the vocals, because cool, we're starting the second, let's bring it back down, let's add that space, let's drop the drum break. And then we got vocals in, and what felt good to me didn't make any sense, but I took 2 bars, cut it, repeated it, so it felt like this restart, then dropped the beat, and then had the strings come up over it, and it added this huge moment dynamically for me in where it just felt so progressive. That sounds like this. Right? Totally different. But when you listen to the vocals in there with it, I mean, it's just amazing how playing around with timing can completely shift a mood for the better in this case.
I ain't beefing with all these niggas, don't even mention me. They gon' kill me if they can. No need for this and come get rid of me. I'm grown now, I'm a man, so tell them ain't no time for sympathy. I've been holding all these bands, don't give a fuck about who not feeling me. You ain't into me. Into me, not no consistency. She ain't into me. Yeah, having you don't know what it meant to me. Ain't get to me. Nah, every time.
So much fun. Just a fun example to experiment, to play, to to ensure those moments are happening. There's no rules. There's no rules to it. Let's go to mastering. A lot of what it is I do is, all right, we've got the recording, we've got the mix, we floated. It's 45 minutes to an hour later. I dropped the speakers. We just got off headphones. Okay, so we just listened to the whole thing. We're rocking it. Da, da, da. And then we come to the top. We start off the record. And from here, I start adding processing for level and control. And now all of a sudden, we're coming at a good intro level of minus 15 loves, push to 14. I'm starting to feel how it sounds out of speakers, but I don't have a beat yet. So we're rocking, we come to the beat and we listen to how all of that reacts to itself.
Control, you got a man up, you done had all these keys.
Perfect, we're at minus 9, minus 8. I start, I was coming into the input a little hot. I could take down every track, or I could just throw a trim and just lower everything, because that's what I felt like doing in the moment. Because digitally, what's the difference? And I throw an EQ on the input. I tailor some of that low end. It's such a big part for where the EQ curve that I have in the out is this low end curve is a slice that immediately pushes out mid range and makes it feel cooler. You gotta play with it so you don't cut out all the low end, and we're watching the limiter come in and try not to go over, and right, and then some multi-band for some love stuff, little texture, another limiter barely getting hit, the BX for saturation, and then we get to ozone, which I felt like just really diving in on this one. We have it on the music bus where it's the widener, and we are just stretching limits of the width of the music. And then again on the pre-master where we have a little bit of EQ, some compression, cutting some frequencies that were offensive, and then back with even more imaging to a limiter. And finally on my master, I took off the EQ, I lowered settings on compression, I took even more out, but also had different settings on imaging for width, because that's how I felt I wanted the record to surround me in that moment to really get in there. Let's dive into Blackball real quick, and I'll show you how fast that works by understanding what we just worked off of here. We're in Blackball. This is a song I did with my buddy Dex that I came up at the studio with, and we spent a lot of time in just building up in those rooms. And it occurred to me that I hadn't talked to him in a long time, and I always had so much respect for him. And I hit him and I was like, how's it going? What's going on? We had this concept for really small drums over a vibe that felt fresh, and just knocked it out of the park to create a moment where I didn't really have to touch anything. You know what I mean? We communicated through it, made sure that 2-track felt right, dropped it in, flew through the record. And you'll notice that a lot of what I have in this session, which was done around the same time as Heart and Soul, is really similar to where you just watched me go through my mix of Heart and Soul, except we're working from the 2-track. I do have a mult on the CLA again. I must have really been into that texture at the time. I rarely do automation, but I have a little bit of reverb automation over the second verse because it got really small and I didn't want those effects overpowering that lead. But when you look at the raw, what it is, everything we just talked about, the lead sending to the bus, going to the output, which we don't have a pre, we just going to the master that's set there, and those lead vocals that are being sent to the bus, and the effect throws and sends, which are going to stabs, and ad-libs, which, you can see the different buses between 81 or EFX, which are some of these throws. This was a really straightforward approach to, okay, there's my intro, there's my outro, here are my hooks, there's second verse, we got a B section into second half of the verse. And to show how fast that works, I mean, we have our same record path, right? Which is going through how we get in. And that was a process of, okay, cool, we worked off that session. This is where these are hitting. That's where my inputs are going. And this was probably done in an hour from recording to where the mix ended up and how I bounced. And by the time I got to the hook with where I dropped everything off, it was just a matter of coming out through speakers and engaging in fine tuning different aspects of the master to get it to smack.
On top of the mountain, looking down on all these niggas hating on me. Goddamn, and I see I got them all debating on me. No, I'm gon' get paid, can't take this hate all free. Yeah. Try to block me out Blackball, but they see me now. In the slums, I didn't know where the fuck I was from. I was rolling, thugging hard with them shotters through time. But now I'm living in my dream now, Straight down in designer, got these diamonds on my body.
By that point, the song was done. Now we're just vibing. That's plenty of time. That's 48 seconds. We have these bypassed on the master. I've just spent the last 45 minutes making sure that levels in headphones are working to where vocals are hitting on the beat. And from that point, it's all right, play it back. Make sure my input isn't going over the threshold of where I need it to be.
On top of the mountain, Looking down on all these niggas hating on me. Goddamn. And I see I got them all debating on me. No, I'm gon' get paid, can't take this hate all free. Yeah, yeah. Try to block me out Blackball, but they see me now. In the slums right in that north, where the fuck I was from. I was rolling, thugging hard. But now I'm living in my dream now, Up your stick 10. If I don't shoot first, no, I'm shooting behind you. That's a dick friend. And no, I want them both, I ain't deciding. Now it's nightfall. Hold on, let me drop my son off. These niggas know I don't like y'all. And know that I don't want talk. She know that I like her, she said that she like me. I wonder why she ain't admitted it. Clubhouse with the badly bitty bitches. They don't see me, but know that I'm kicking it. They be rapping my songs, they know I get down. They know for a fact that I'm living it. Know I wanna come down, but here come the beef, and they know for a fact that I'm killing it. That my side bitch. They know that's my best.
Right there was a moment where I felt like, you know what, I just want a little bit more push over that section into the other part. So, you know, we have our little reverb here that on the fly was just a copy. I just literally, as we were recording, sliced that, dragged it down, right, lowered clip gain on the fly, and added this texture, which, surrounded by the lead vocal,
and they know for a fact that I'm killing it. That my side bitch. They know that's my best friend. Ooh, pop up breaking, ain't no texting.
Which all helps in you know the final result for how I feel in the moment flying with Top. And you know, those are two examples of how both can work. You know, we flew through a lot of stuff. I hope there were some things that, you know, can be picked apart in how I work that help you along, you know, what you're after. You know, end of the day, have fun, don't give up, just keep creating. And you know, I look forward to running in some guys in the future that some of this stuff helped inspire. So thanks.
All right, I hope you enjoyed that MixCon Masterclass with Jason Cheese Goldberg as much as I did. Right after this, we are going to have a live streamed Q&A with him, so join us there with your questions, and we'll talk more about today's sponsors, oeksound. He shows them very briefly in today's mix, but Jason has told me that he uses Soothe 2 on pretty much every single vocal he ever mixes. It's a tool that makes a lot of sense and is probably super necessary in the realm of recording guerrilla vocals in pretty much any type of room environment, just like Cheese does in his own work. All right, remember to hit like and subscribe the notifications bell so you know more about these as they come out. Remember to enter the MixCon Mega Giveaway for your chance to win, actually 3 chances to win tens of thousands of dollars worth of free gear. Now we'll go over to the live stream Q&A with Jason Cheese Goldberg and answer your questions. Hope to see you there.